Welcome, traveler of time, to another quiet journey through the past. I'm the sleepy historian, and tonight we'll drift together into a world that once buzzed with quiet exchange, the ancient marketplace. Not the roaring, crowded kind of noise that fills our modern cities, but the gentle hum of barter, the soft creak of carts, and the rhythmic murmur of 1,000 small trades that built civilizations grain by grain. This is boring history for sleep. A place where history moves slowly, softly, and steadily, where the past unfolds at the pace of your breathing. If this kind of storytelling helps you rest, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it truly brings you peace. And if you're listening right now, perhaps in bed, lights low, eyes heavy, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's strangely comforting to know who else is out there, falling asleep to the same old stories. Stories of merchants and markets, of coins and conversations long forgotten. Tonight's story is part of our series of history sleep stories. Calm bedtime storytelling, a soft-spoken history documentary crafted for quiet minds. So, settle in. Let the dust of centuries settle around you. Let the faint echoes of trade and travel wash over your thoughts. And as you listen, imagine yourself walking among rows of worn wooden stalls beneath the sun of some ancient day. The air is thick with the scent of spice and sun-warmed earth. A potter hums to himself as he sets his jars in a neat row. A cloth seller smooths out linen so fine it almost glows in the afternoon light. The murmured sounds of conversation blend into one continuous rhythm, calm, endless, like waves against a harbor wall. Coins change hands, small, heavy, each bearing the mark of a kingdom or city now long gone. The smell of olives, of smoke, of leather, and dust mingles in the breeze. As we wander through the forgotten marketplaces of antiquity, we'll explore 4 quiet corners of that world. First, we'll step into the daily life of ordinary people, bakers, vendors, travelers, whose lives are measured not by battles or thrones, but by the rhythm of trade. Next, we'll follow a biography, the story of a merchant whose footsteps carried him across seas and deserts. Then, we'll drift toward the mysteries of archaeology to see what time has hidden beneath layers of dust and ruin. And finally, we'll ascend, gently, to the halls of the elite, where wealth and power shaped markets in ways both subtle and profound. Through it all, the tone will remain slow, steady, and soothing, never hurried, never loud. Because history, like sleep, unfolds best when you allow it to. So take a deep breath. The markets of the ancient world are opening once more for you and for the quiet hours ahead. Let the night settle. Let the past begin to speak in whispers. And let the story unfold. The day begins quietly in the heart of an ancient city. Before the sun fully rises, the air still holds the cool breath of night, tinged with the faint scent of damp stone and ashes from last evening's fires. You can almost hear it, the hush before movement, before trade, before the world awakens. Imagine yourself walking along narrow streets paved with uneven stone. The buildings are close together, their walls rough with lime plaster, their wooden doors still closed. Cats move silently through shadows, slipping between baskets and pottery jars left out overnight. The faint rustle of cloth, someone rolling open a canopy, someone stirring the embers of a hearth, marks the first stirrings of the marketplace. Soon, the rhythm begins. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. A woman carrying figs wrapped in palm leaves. A man leading a mule laden with pottery jars that knock softly together like hollow drums. The air fills with low voices, a language of barter and greeting that has no single home. In every ancient city, from Athens to Alexandria, from Rome to Damascus, the marketplace was not just a place of commerce. It was the living pulse of the community. People came not only to buy or sell, but to see, to speak, to listen. The day's news traveled more easily through the marketplace than through any official channel. A merchant might tell of a new tax on grain. A sailor might whisper of distant storms. A priest might quietly warn that a certain festival must be delayed because the omens are unclear. You stand near a stall where baskets of olives gleam like tiny drops of midnight. The merchant greets you with a nod. Not a smile, not quite, but a kind of acknowledgement that you exist within the same quiet order of morning tasks. The table beside him holds ceramic jugs sealed with wax. Beside those, blocks of salt wrapped in reed leaves. Further on, you pass a potter's stall. His hands are stained a gentle red from the clay, and he hums softly as he polishes the lip of a new amphora. His work is slow, deliberate, timeless. The wheel spins not in haste, but in rhythm, a steady turning as steady as breath. Overhead, sunlight begins to spill through the gaps between rooftops. Dust motes rise, glowing faintly, suspended in the calm warmth. A child laughs. One clear note that briefly breaks the stillness. Then silence again, gentle and wide. In one corner, a group of elders sit upon low stools, wrapped in simple wool cloaks. Their conversation drifts like smoke. Quiet talk of harvests, of the river's water level, of how prices for barley seem higher this year. No one speaks quickly. No one rushes. There is time, always time. As you walk, the smells change. Fresh bread cooling on wooden trays. The sharp, resinous note of olive oil poured into clay jars. A faint sweetness, honey, perhaps, stirred into warm wine. A boy offers you a piece of dried fig, its surface dusted with flour to keep it from sticking to his fingers. You thank him with a nod, and he moves on. This is not a grand marketplace. It is not the bustling agora of Athens at noon, nor the vast forum of Rome. It is ordinary, small, human. The rhythm of life measured in footsteps and voices, not in monuments. Yet it is here, in these narrow lanes, that the ancient world truly lived, in the repetition of trade, in the slow rituals of exchange, in the quiet endurance of those who worked from dawn to dusk. Imagine yourself standing still now, in the midst of it. The hum of the crowd is a soft and endless tone. You don't need to understand the words being spoken. You only need to hear the pattern. Rise and fall, offer and answer, greeting and farewell. In this place, history breathes gently. It does not shout. It does not hurry. It simply continues, as it always has, as it always will, in the steady rhythm of ordinary people living ordinary days. And as the morning deepens, the sun climbs higher. The shadows shorten. The market, once drowsy and tentative, is now fully awake. The air warms. The smell of baked bread grows stronger. Somewhere, a small bell rings to mark the beginning of trade. You take a breath, slow, even, and feel the air of the past fill your lungs. This is how every day once began, not with declarations or drama, but with quiet purpose and the soft, endless pulse of work. The market morning has begun. As the morning matures, the market grows into its rhythm, steady, deliberate, familiar. The first rush of opening has passed. The stalls are alive now, each with its own small world of movement and exchange. Imagine yourself walking slowly through the rows of traders, letting your gaze rest upon the smallest details. The weave of a basket, the shimmer of bronze scales used for weighing coins, the marks of years' worth of footsteps on the packed dust beneath your feet. The hum of conversation surrounds you. Not loud, not chaotic, simply constant. The voices blend together, a language made of tone more than words. You hear the measured back and forth of bargaining, the soft laughter of acquaintances, the muted clatter of pottery as someone rearranges their wares. It is a kind of music, the ancient music of trade. Near a shaded wall, a cloth seller sits cross-legged beside rolls of linen and wool. His fingers are rough from years of folding and tying, but his motions are graceful. He doesn't call out or advertise. Instead, he waits, as many merchants do, trusting that those who need his goods will find their way to him. His cloths are dyed in muted hues, earth tones, sea blues, faded reds, colors that catch the eye not through brilliance, but through harmony. A few stalls away, a man sells amphorae of oil, each sealed with a square of wax and stamped with a symbol. The oil within comes from groves that stretch beyond the horizon, where workers rise before dawn to beat the olives from their branches. Each jar represents not just a product, but the labor of countless unseen hands: pickers, pressers, potters, carriers. The marketplace gathers them all in silent cooperation. You pause before a group of women arranging piles of grain. They work with quiet precision, smoothing the tops of their baskets with their palms. One woman measures out barley with a wooden scoop, her movements almost ceremonial. Another counts lentils, her voice soft, rhythmic, as if reciting a song. A child nearby plays with a smooth pebble, drawing circles in the dust. Above you, the sun stands high now. The awnings of the stalls create stripes of shade and light across the street. A breeze passes through, carrying with it the mingled scents of olive oil, herbs, and baked clay. You catch the faint sweetness of dried dates and the deeper aroma of smoked fish wrapped in leaves. The sensory world of the market is layered, smell upon smell, sound upon sound, yet never overwhelming. Everything exists in balance, as if time itself moves more slowly here. There is a rhythm to every act of trade. Coins clink softly as they pass from hand to hand. A scale tips, then steadies. A nod is exchanged, brief, respectful, unspoken. Many buyers return to the same merchants each day, building trust through small gestures. There are no contracts, no signatures. A deal is sealed with a glance, a reputation, a memory. In the corner, a scribe sits behind a low table, offering his services to those who cannot write. He copies letters for traveling traders, recording debts or orders to be sent across the sea. His reed pen scratches faintly across papyrus, leaving behind lines that might someday become dust, but for now, they hold meaning. He is quiet, patient, his mind half in the words and half in the soft murmur of the market around him. Nearby, a water seller ladles cool water from a clay jar into cups for a few coins. The sound of pouring water mingles with the rustle of wind and conversation. Each small act repeats again and again, like a mantra. In this repetition lies comfort, the certainty that tomorrow will come and the rhythm will begin anew. As midday approaches, the heat grows heavier and the market slows. Traders draw their awnings lower, shielding themselves and their goods from the glare. Some sit and eat small meals of bread and olives. Others simply rest, heads bowed, eyes half closed. The air becomes still except for the faint whisper of flies and the creak of wood under strain. The sounds fade to a near silence, the kind that invites you to listen to your own breathing. Imagine yourself sitting in that shade, watching. You notice the dust dancing lazily in sunlight, the texture of the woven mats beneath your hands, the gentle pattern of movement even in stillness. The ancient world, for all its distance, feels close, not because of its monuments or empires, but because of these ordinary hours that mirror our own. As the heat begins to fade, movement returns, slowly at first. A merchant stretching his arms, a donkey braying from somewhere nearby, and then the rhythm resumes. The market never truly stops. It only pauses like a heartbeat between beats. The sun begins its long descent, and the light softens into gold. Coins glint faintly. Voices return, lower and calmer now. The day bends toward its close, but for a while longer, trade continues in the warm air. It is in these hours, the quiet exchanges, the familiar gestures, the shared patience, that civilization itself was sustained. Without soldiers, without kings, without grand decrees, life endured through the small, persistent rhythm of work and trade. The market breathes. You breathe with it. And somewhere in the soundless balance between coin and word, between offer and acceptance, the ancient world continues to hum, endlessly, softly, like a lullaby carved in dust. As the sun drifts lower in the sky, the colors of the marketplace begin to change. The sharp brightness of day softens into amber, then into rose, and finally into that muted gold that lingers just before dusk. You can almost see it. Lights sliding across weathered stone, spilling over rows of goods, and curling beneath the wooden stalls like liquid honey. The rhythm of the market begins to slow again, not abruptly, but in waves. The sounds soften one by one. The calls of merchants become quieter, the clink of coins more infrequent, and the hum of voices dissolves into a low murmur, carried on the cooling air. It is not the silence of emptiness, but of completion, the soft exhale after a long, steady breath. Imagine yourself walking through the marketplace now. The shadows have lengthened. A faint breeze carries the scent of crushed herbs and dust. The stones beneath your feet are warm from the sun, holding the day's memory. A potter wipes his hands on his apron and covers his wares with linen cloths to keep the evening dew away. Nearby, a butcher cleans his table with quiet focus, setting aside scraps to be given to stray animals that gather at the edge of the square. A woman selling lamps lights one of her small clay creations, a flicker of flame catching within the oil. Soon, 100 tiny flames echo it across the market, glowing like fallen stars. Their light trembles against jars, bowls, and baskets, turning the ordinary into something momentarily beautiful. Children weave between the stalls, chasing each other's laughter. Their footsteps echo off the stone walls. A few older men sit near the fountain at the center of the square, speaking softly of the day's trade, what sold, what didn't, and the rumors brought in from travelers. A sailor claims to have seen strange ships on the horizon. Another man shrugs and says the sea is full of stories. The evening meal begins to take shape. The smell of roasted grain and lentil stew drifts through the air. Bread still warm from a baker's oven is shared in pieces, dipped in oil, sprinkled with salt. Someone strums a stringed instrument nearby. Not a song for an audience, just a tune for passing time. You find a seat on a low wall and listen. The sound of conversation, the faint music, the soft rustle of cloth being packed away, all blend into a single calm harmony. The market breathes its last hours of the day with quiet dignity. As darkness deepens, torches are lit along the outer walls. Their flames dance, casting long, soft shadows that flicker across the faces of those still present. The marketplace feels smaller now, enclosed by night. The crowd has thinned. Only the last customers remain, bartering for goods they forgot earlier or could not afford until now. A pot of lentils simmers somewhere, sending a steady curl of steam into the cooling air. It's easy, in this fading light, to imagine that nothing has changed for thousands of years. The same gestures, the same voices, the same careful exchange of work for sustenance. Each life here is part of a pattern older than empire or temple, the quiet endurance of ordinary people providing for one another. The smell of smoke begins to blend with the night air. A few merchants speak softly of tomorrow, whether the fishermen will return on time, whether the roads remain safe for travelers. There are always questions, but none that can't wait for dawn. Gradually, the lamps are extinguished. One by one, the stalls are covered, the animals led away. The cobbled square empties, though a faint hum of life remains, a heartbeat beneath the stone. You hear the distant clatter of wheels, the soft neigh of a horse, the gentle rhythm of sandals against earth. The city does not sleep entirely, it simply rests. You begin to walk toward the edge of the square. The stars are visible now, bright, patient, eternal. The same stars that once watched over this market long before names or empires existed. Their light falls evenly on everything. The ruins of the future, the labor of the present, the memory of what has been sold and traded and lived. In the quiet, you realize how much history survives not through monuments, but through repetition, through these daily acts of care and effort. The markets were never only about commerce. They were about connection. Each exchange was a thread in a vast, invisible web binding communities together. Farmer to potter, potter to traveler, traveler to storyteller, and storyteller to the long silence of night. As you listen, the city sighs around you. The sound of shutters closing, of distant footsteps fading, of a final whisper of wind across the empty square. The scent of oil and grain still lingers, soft and comforting. You take one last look at the now darkened market. The outlines of its stalls barely visible beneath the moonlight. Another day has ended, as countless others did before. The market will sleep, and in the morning it will wake again. The rhythm continues, as steady and certain as the turning of the earth. You walk away slowly, your steps echoing against the stone. Behind you, the night folds itself gently around the marketplace, a blanket of darkness, cool and silent. For a long moment, nothing stirs. Only the faintest flicker of a lamp remains, burning low beside a closed stall. The flame sways in the breeze, then steadies, patient, enduring, like the heartbeat of history itself. The world of the marketplace does not end at the edge of the city. Beyond its walls stretch the roads and harbors that bind distant lands together, the arteries of an ancient economy pulsing with quiet persistence. Among those who walked these paths was one such man, a merchant, unnamed in the records, though we might imagine him clearly enough. His life was not the life of legend or empire. He left no monuments, no inscriptions. Yet through his footsteps, the markets of the ancient world were woven into a single living fabric. Imagine him rising before dawn in a small stone dwelling near the harbor. The sound of waves fills the air, mingling with the cry of gulls. He packs his goods carefully, jars of oil sealed with wax, rolls of linen, small amphorae filled with fragrant resin. Each item represents months of labor and trust, investments of faith as much as of coin. His hands move with practiced precision, checking the ropes that bind each bundle. He has done this many times before and will do it again as long as his strength endures. Outside, the streets are quiet except for the footsteps of dock workers and the creak of wooden carts. The first light of day spills across the harbor, gilding the masts of anchored ships. The merchant watches as the sailors load cargo, sacks of grain, baskets of dried figs, pottery, tools, and spices from distant lands whose names are half forgotten even in his time. He pauses for a moment to breathe in the salt air. The scent of tar and rope mixes with the faint perfume of resin and citrus. His thoughts drift, perhaps, to his family, a wife and children who remain behind, trusting that he will return before the next harvest. Travel is dangerous, yet necessary. Roads crumble. Pirates prowl the seas. But trade is the thread that ties his life to countless others, and so he continues. By mid-morning, the merchant ship is ready. It is not large, a modest coastal vessel. Its sails patched from years of use, its hull scarred by salt and time. The crew greets him with nods, men who have sailed together long enough to understand each other's silence. They work in rhythm, ropes pulled taut, sails unfurled, anchor raised. Slowly, the ship begins to move away from the shore. From the deck, the city recedes. White stone houses, red-tiled roofs, the faint gleam of the market square far inland. Soon, the horizon swallows it. The sea opens before him, vast, slow, endless. The creak of timbers becomes the pulse of the day. The wind, the steady breathing of the world. The merchant's life at sea is not one of adventure, but of patience. The journey is long, marked by repetition, tying ropes, checking cargo, watching the sky for changes in color that hint at shifting weather. The sun burns quietly overhead, and the days slide into one another. The mind drifts, finding solace in small routines. He polishes his bronze coins, counts his amphorae, whispers quiet prayers to gods of safe passage. At night, the stars emerge, silent, innumerable. He recognizes a few constellations that mark the trade routes. There above the mast is the Great Bear, and beneath it, the line of the twins. The same stars that guided Phoenician sailors and Egyptian traders centuries before now watch over him. He lies on the deck, eyes half closed, feeling the slow sway of the sea beneath his body. Days pass. Sometimes they stop at small ports, islands where fishermen sell dried fish and potters trade rough earthenware. The merchant walks through these towns quietly, noting the differences in dialect, in clothing, and how people weigh their goods. The markets may change, but their rhythm remains the same. He finds comfort in that sameness, the eternal repetition of human need and exchange. In one port, he meets another trader from the east, carrying spices wrapped in palm leaves. The air around the man smells of cinnamon and cardamom, unfamiliar scents that cling to his robes. They speak in fragments, using gestures more than words. A trade is made, a few jars of oil exchanged for a small pouch of fragrant powder. Both men smile softly. No signatures, no witnesses. Only trust. That night, the merchant sits by the ship's rail and opens the pouch. The scent rises, sharp, sweet, complex. It reminds him of markets at home, of his wife's cooking, of childhood festivals long past. He ties it carefully, placing it among his goods, and watches the harbor lights flicker on the black water. The journey continues. The winds shift, carrying them southward toward warmer shores. Days of calm alternate with days of slow, heavy rain. Salt crusts over their hands and clothes. Yet still, the merchant endures, tending to his cargo, measuring, recording, balancing. The sea is both friend and judge, generous, but never predictable. Imagine him standing on deck as dawn breaks again, the world washed clean by night. The air is cool, almost sweet. He feels the pull of distant harbors, of new markets waiting beyond the curve of the earth. His life is not marked by conquest or glory. It is measured in distance, in repetition, in patience. And so he sails onward, not seeking fame, but continuity. Each voyage a thread, each harbor a note in the long, quiet music of trade. He is one of countless nameless merchants whose journeys built the unseen foundations of the ancient world. The merchant's story is not dramatic, but it is enduring. In his careful labor, his trust, and his steady endurance lies the true heart of civilization. That slow exchange of effort and hope that has carried humanity through the ages. The merchant's journey carries him farther than most men of his city will ever go. Days pass into weeks. The steady whisper of waves becomes his constant companion, and even silence has a sound. The faint creak of rope, the sigh of wind through sails, the rhythmic groan of wood as the sea breathes beneath it. Imagine the ship gliding slowly through the open water, the surface rippling like silk beneath the morning sun. The merchant stands at the bow, watching a line of coastline emerge, faint blue-gray and shimmering in the haze. Another world begins to take shape, one both familiar and strange. The harbor they approach is older than memory, its piers lined with ships from every direction of the compass. Flags of distant kingdoms flutter in the breeze. The air carries the mingled scents of incense, fish, tar, and crushed fruit. Here, on this foreign shore, trade is its own language, one that requires no translation. The merchant steps onto the stone quay, his sandals tapping softly. He walks with measured calm, not as a visitor, but as someone entering a rhythm already known. The marketplace lies just beyond the harbor, a labyrinth of narrow lanes shaded by woven mats. The sound of barter hums like a gentle tide. He moves among stalls piled high with strange and beautiful things. Ivory combs carved with delicate lines. Glass beads that catch the sun in flashes of blue and green. Bolts of silk smooth as water, their dyes deep and unfamiliar. Each item has traveled its own journey, carried by caravan, by river, by sea. Each bears the touch of hands from lands he will never see. The merchant stops at a spice seller's table. The air is heavy with scent, cinnamon, pepper, saffron, and something sharp, almost floral, that he does not recognize. The seller greets him with a nod, and they begin the ritual of exchange, the weighing, the inspecting, the quiet negotiation. Coins pass between them with the softest clink, like a whisper of trust. Further on, he visits a potter whose vessels gleam with a glaze unlike any he has seen. The colors shift with the light, pale green to deep amber. The potter explains, through gestures, that the glaze comes from ash mixed with river clay. The merchant listens, not needing every word. He understands through the rhythm of tone and the patient repetition of movement. As the day warms, he sits beneath an awning to rest. Around him, The sounds of the market continue. The distant thud of millstones, the splash of water from a well, the murmur of trade in half a dozen tongues. It is a music he could almost sleep to. He watches the way people move, the way their gestures mirror those of the merchants back home. Every market, he realizes, has the same heartbeat, the steady exchange of labor and life. He takes out a small piece of bread from his satchel, dipping it into oil from his own supply. A group of children watch him curiously, their faces half hidden behind baskets of fruit. He smiles, breaking the bread in two, offering a piece. They hesitate, then accept it shyly. The moment passes in silence, a quiet reminder that generosity, too, is a kind of trade, something given freely, yet always returned in memory. Later, the merchant visits the harbor temple to give thanks for safe passage. The air inside is cool, heavy with the scent of resin. He leaves a small offering, a jar of oil, as he has done in every port before. His prayers are simple, not for wealth, but for return. As the sun lowers, he walks back toward the docks. The water glows like metal under the light. Sailors coil ropes and secure cargo for the next departure. The merchant's goods are fewer now, his storage lighter, but his purse heavier. Yet he knows this wealth is temporary. It will soon become more goods, more journeys, more exchanges. Profit is only motion, a way to keep life turning. At the edge of the quay, he pauses to watch another ship arrive. Its sails are bright red, its crew speaking in an unfamiliar tongue. They carry bundles of furs, amber, and tin from lands far to the north. He marvels at the web of connections stretching unseen across the world, a network of trades so vast that no single man could ever grasp its full reach. And yet, here he stands, one small link in that endless chain. As evening falls, lamps are lit along the harbor. Their reflections tremble on the black water, each flame a tiny heartbeat. The merchant sits on a wooden crate, resting, listening to the creak of ships rocking gently in the current. He feels a quiet satisfaction, not the pride of conquest, but the deep calm of belonging to something greater than himself. He thinks of home, of the familiar market streets, of voices he knows, of his children perhaps now sleeping beneath the same stars. Trade connects not just places, but moments, the past and the future, the near and the far. Every journey is both departure and return, a circle unbroken by time. And as the lamps burn lower and the harbor grows still, the merchant closes his eyes and breathes the salt air. The night smells the same everywhere: sea, smoke, and faint sweetness. The world feels vast, yet somehow intimate. The marketplace never truly ends. It only changes its shape, its scent, its sound. In that thought lies his comfort. The rhythm continues, steady, patient, eternal. Weeks turn into months before the merchant sees his homeland again. The voyage home is quieter than the journey outward. The cargo lighter, the decks cleaner, the minds of the crew more restful. The work is done. The sea has accepted their passage. All that remains is the slow return, the long crossing that brings one life full circle. Imagine the ship under soft gray skies, its sails heavy with mist. The wind is calm, the waves low and rhythmic, a gentle breathing of the sea. The merchant sits near the stern, his cloak wrapped tightly around him, and writes in his small ledger. The pages are thick, darkened at the edges by salt and time. His handwriting is neat but small, notes of weights and measures, ports and prices, reminders for the next voyage. The words are not poetry, yet they hold meaning enough to fill a lifetime. He writes of a harbor where silk was cheaper than he expected, of a certain pottery glaze that fetched good prices, of a kind host who offered bread and wine. Each line is simple, but behind it lies the texture of days, the sound of water against wood, the call of foreign birds, the smell of fruit ripening in the sun. The ledger is his memory, his map of both profit and passage. At dusk, he closes the book and watches the horizon fade into blue. The first stars appear, faint lights scattered across the vast calm of the sky. They remind him of the small lamps burning each night in distant markets. Every flame a reflection of the same human persistence to build, to trade, to survive, to connect. When at last the coast of home appears, it comes not as a revelation, but as a slow unfolding. Faint outlines of hills, the curve of the harbor wall, the familiar scent of pine carried on the wind. The crew stirs with quiet energy, each man preparing for the end of the voyage. Lines are coiled, sails drawn, voices hushed in anticipation. The ship glides into the harbor as dawn returns to the world. The city looks the same white walls, the same tiled roofs, the same faint smoke rising from morning fires. Yet to the merchant, it feels subtly changed, as if time has polished it while he was away. He steps onto the dock, his sandals meeting the stone with a soft, familiar sound. For a moment, he stands still, letting the land steady beneath his feet. He walks slowly through the streets toward the marketplace. The air carries the same scents he remembers: bread baking, oil warming, fruit ripening under the sun. Stalls open one by one, as though the city itself is awakening. Some of the merchants recognize him and nod in greeting. Others have gone, replaced by new faces. The rhythm continues, as it always does. At his stall, the merchant sets down his goods. Small pouches of spice, carefully sealed jars of oil, beads of colored glass that shimmer faintly in the light. People begin to gather, curious. His wife arrives soon after, carrying a basket and a quiet smile. There is no grand reunion, no loud celebration, only the simple comfort of presence. She helps him unpack, her hands moving with familiar care. The children come running, their voices bright, their questions endless. The merchant answers a few, then lets his gaze drift outward, across the market square, across the stalls, across the steady pattern of life. He feels both part of it and apart from it, as travelers often do when they return. The world continues whether he sails or not. His journeys may shape small ripples, but the great current of trade flows on without pause. Later that afternoon, he opens his ledger again, seated behind the stall. He adds one final line beneath the others. Return at dawn. Goods received. All is well. It is a simple sentence, yet it holds the weight of the entire voyage. The storms endured, the strangers met, the exchanges made, the quiet hours spent watching stars. Around him, the marketplace hums with the soft familiarity of everyday life. The rhythm he left has welcomed him back. Somewhere nearby, a potter turns his wheel. A woman counts coins. A boy chases a stray dog between baskets of grain. Nothing remarkable, yet everything essential. As the sun lowers again, the merchant tidies his stall, placing the unsold goods back into storage jars. The golden light of evening settles over the square, turning the dust into a soft haze. He looks up once more at the sky, the same sky that had followed him across the sea, and feels a quiet gratitude. He has brought the distant world home, not through conquest, but through exchange. In this calm balance between movement and rest, the merchant's life finds its meaning. He will sail again, perhaps, when the season turns and the winds favor departure. Or perhaps he will remain, trading stories instead of goods, teaching his sons the rhythm of the scales and the language of patience. In either case, his life's work continues, a gentle thread in the vast, unending fabric of human trade. As night falls, the market closes. Lamps flicker once more. The merchant writes one last note, then sets aside his ledger. He listens to the familiar quiet, the faint clatter of shutters, the murmur of distant waves. The journey, the homecoming, the trade, all blend together into one continuous rhythm. The past breathes softly in the present, and the present becomes tomorrow. And beneath it all, steady as a heartbeat, the marketplace endures. Centuries pass. The bustling markets, the rhythmic calls of traders, the scent of oils and spices, all fade into silence. What was once alive with sound and color becomes dust, then soil, then memory. The wooden stalls decay, the clay jars crumble, and the echoes of commerce sink slowly into the earth. The marketplace, that living pulse of ancient life, is buried, not by catastrophe, but by time itself. Imagine the sun rising over a stretch of dry land where once a harbor stood. The air is warm and still. A few olive trees cast thin shadows over the uneven ground. Beneath this quiet surface lies what was once the heart of a city, its meeting place, its rhythm, its soul. The archaeologists arrive not as conquerors, but as listeners, patient and precise, bending close to the earth as if to hear what it remembers. They begin with brushes, not shovels. Each stroke releases a faint puff of dust, the air rich with the scent of baked clay and dry stone. The ground is stubborn, unhurried. The work requires patience, an almost meditative rhythm. Days stretch into weeks, and gradually the shape of the marketplace begins to reappear. A faint outline of foundations, a line of broken pillars, the remains of what may have been a well. Every small discovery is quietly significant. A fragment of painted pottery, a coin darkened by centuries, a clay tablet inscribed with a list of goods, salt, oil, figs, copper. The letters are faint but still legible, their strokes steady and practiced. Somewhere, long ago, a hand wrote them with care, never imagining they would be seen again by another hand, thousands of years later. As the archaeologists work, the world above continues in silence. The only sounds are the soft brush of tools, the rustle of notes being taken, the low murmur of voices speaking carefully so as not to disturb the dust. There is no rush. Time moves slowly here, measured not in minutes, but in layers. Each layer holds a different century, a different life, a different rhythm of the same eternal trade. One afternoon, a student clears the dirt from a series of stones arranged in a circle. At first, it seems unremarkable, but then they notice patterns, faint grooves worn smooth by repetition. Perhaps this was where scales once rested or coins were counted, a place where hundreds of quiet exchanges took place. The stones are mute now, but their worn surfaces hold memory. The memory of countless hands, countless small decisions, the gentle weight of commerce repeated again and again until it left its mark on stone. In a nearby trench, a shallow pit reveals fragments of amphory, tall, narrow jars once used to carry oil and wine. The archaeologists piece them together like a puzzle. When whole, the jars stand nearly as tall as a man. On their surfaces are faint marks, symbols of ownership, or perhaps merchant seals. These marks, once functional, now feel almost ceremonial, as if each belonged to a vanished order of everyday rituals. The marketplace slowly takes shape in their records, not the bustling noise and color of life, but its quiet residue. Measurements, sketches, soil samples, and catalog numbers. The archaeologists speak in gentle tones, describing what cannot be seen. The layout of stalls, the drainage channels, the worn pathways beneath what was once a canopy of woven reed. Their voices carry the soft awe of those who understand that discovery is not conquest, but conversation. And yet, there is mystery here. Why was this marketplace abandoned? Was it shifting trade routes, or the slow retreat of the sea? Perhaps the city simply moved, leaving its old heart behind. The records give no certain answer. The silence deepens the wonder. As the light fades each evening, the archaeologists cover the trenches carefully. The site sleeps again, wrapped in its linen sheets of dust. At night, the desert air cools and grows still. The stars above seem brighter here, untouched by city lights. They shine over what was once the busiest place in the world, now silent, now calm. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. The faint echo of voices, the rhythm of footsteps on stone, the soft chime of coins. For a moment, the past feels close, not as a story of kings and wars, but as a hum of ordinary life, steady and familiar. The archaeologists sense it too. They work not only to uncover history, but to listen to it, to let the past speak in its quiet way. When morning comes again, the work resumes. Brushes sweep, dust rises. The patient uncovering continues. Beneath the sun, beneath the weight of centuries, the marketplace breathes once more, not as noise, but as a memory awakening. And through this gentle excavation, we are reminded of something enduring. Everything that lives leaves traces. Even the most ordinary moments, the weighing of grain, the counting of coins, the tying of rope, leave behind small marks that outlast us all. History, in the end, is not just about grand monuments or great names, but about the soft persistence of daily life, the quiet endurance of human rhythm. The archaeologists pack their tools as the day cools. The site glows in the late sunlight, a mosaic of color: sand, stone, fragments, shadow. They walk away slowly, leaving behind the uncovered past, trusting that the earth will hold it gently until the next hand comes to listen. When the archaeologists finish for the day, they often gather in the shade, speaking softly about what they have found. Yet as they talk, their minds reach further than the evidence. They begin to imagine the lives that once filled these spaces, the gestures, the sounds, the patterns of daily exchange. In that imagining, the ruins seem to breathe again. It is easy to think of trade as a simple transaction, one thing for another. But in the ancient world, exchange was never merely economic. It was sacred. Every scale and weight, every measure jar or bundle of goods was also a quiet act of trust between strangers. Even the simplest marketplace was an expression of faith, not in gods alone, but in each other. In many cities, the market was built beside a temple. The line between the sacred and the ordinary blurred until they were inseparable. Traders began the day with offerings: a small cup of oil poured at an altar, a few grains of incense, a prayer for fair dealings. To cheat a customer was not only dishonest, it was impious, a disruption of balance. The gods of trade were many, their forms shifting across time and language. Some guarded the scales, others the sea routes, others still the courage of those who traveled. Imagine walking through one of those early markets. The sounds are gentle and constant. The low hum of voices, the soft ring of coins, the creak of carts. A thin ribbon of smoke rises from a shrine where a small fire burns. The air carries the mingled scent of warm bread, wax, and resin. Traders pause now and then to touch the amulets hanging from their necks, tokens of protection and gratitude. In one corner, a small statue stands near a well. Its features are weathered smooth, the face serene and untroubled. A merchant fills a jar of water, dips a hand in offering, and murmurs a few words before returning to his stall. He does not think of this as prayer. It is simply part of the rhythm of life, a gesture of respect to the unseen forces that govern fortune and fairness. The archaeologists uncover fragments of these rituals in curious ways. A coin buried beneath the threshold of a stall, perhaps an offering for prosperity. A small clay figurine broken, but carefully placed under the foundation, a charm for luck. The soil itself becomes a record of quiet belief. Each find reveals that trade was not cold or mechanical. It was human, layered with hope and uncertainty. Some of the artifacts speak not of wealth, but of care. A merchant's weight carefully carved into the shape of a bird. A jar painted with flowers that no longer grow in the region. These details remind us that commerce, at its heart, was also an art. A conversation between skill and need, between beauty and function. Across cultures, the same patterns repeat. In Mesopotamia, traders invoked Nana, the moon god, who watched their journeys from above. In Greece, Hermes presided over markets and travelers alike. In Rome, Mercury guided the exchange of goods and messages, ensuring that words and wares alike found their destinations. In Egypt, the goddess Mot represented balance, the perfect measure in every transaction. To trade fairly was to live in harmony with the universe itself. The archaeologists discuss these connections as they record their findings. Their voices drift across the site in the fading light. One of them observes that every marketplace, no matter how humble, was a reflection of cosmic order, a microcosm of give and take, loss and gain, movement and stillness. Another notes that the symmetry of trade mirrored the symmetry of the human body. Two hands, two scales, two sides meeting in equilibrium. As dusk settles, they fall quiet. The air cools, carrying the faint scent of earth and stone. In the stillness, they can almost sense the rhythm that once filled this place. The rise and fall of voices, the clatter of tools, the soft exchanges that bound communities together. Somewhere in that rhythm lies the mystery of continuity. Even after centuries of silence, the essence of exchange endures. The form changes from grain to coin, from coin to paper, from paper to numbers on a screen, but the impulse remains the same: the desire to connect, to balance, to give and receive. The archaeologists note that many of the marketplaces they uncover were rebuilt again and again upon the same foundations. When fires came, when floods swept through, the people returned, laid new stones upon the old, and began again. The act of rebuilding was itself a ritual, a reaffirmation of community. To trade was to trust that tomorrow would come. As night deepens, the stars appear, faintly echoing the lamps that once lined the stalls. The archaeologists imagine those ancient nights when a market, long after closing, glowed softly under oil flames. Merchants counted their coins, shared bread, spoke of distant ports. Perhaps they, too, looked up at these same stars and felt a quiet peace, the satisfaction of having given something, received something, and belonged to a rhythm larger than themselves. The archaeologists pack their notebooks and lamps, and for a moment, one of them lingers. He runs his hand gently over a stone worn smooth by ages of passing feet. It feels warm, almost alive. The world has changed beyond recognition, yet the human need for connection, exchange, and fairness remains constant. And as they leave the site, the faint breeze stirs the dust once more. The market sleeps again, its whispers carried lightly on the wind. Stories not of kings or empires, but of ordinary hands and the quiet beauty of balance. When dawn returns, the desert glows with a pale and gentle light. The archaeologists are gone for the season, their tents packed, the paths smooth. The trenches lie quiet beneath protective coverings. The site looks like nothing more than an ordinary patch of sand, a silence that hides centuries. Yet beneath that stillness, stories remain. The earth holds them with infinite patience, the way memory holds moments too delicate to speak aloud. Imagine standing there alone as the wind moves softly across the dunes. The air smells faintly of dust and salt. Far off, you can just make out the faint shimmer of the sea, now distant, though once it would have lapped at the city's edge. You close your eyes and picture it, the hum of life, the market stalls, the colored awnings fluttering in the breeze. The voices rise again in your mind, low and overlapping, forming a rhythm almost like the sea itself, a language older than words, the steady pulse of exchange. Nothing of that life survives intact, yet everything remains in traces: the grooves in a threshold, the outline of a hearth, the imprint of a jar in hardened clay. These are the echoes that the archaeologists chase, but they also belong to us. For what they uncover is not merely an ancient economy. It is the blueprint of human continuity. Every society, from the first to the last, gathers around the same needs: warmth, nourishment, connection, and fairness. The marketplace was simply where those needs met and became visible. As the sun rises higher, the color of the landscape deepens. Stones gleam pale gold, and shadows shorten. You can almost see, if you let your thoughts drift, the faint shimmer of movement. A hand passing a coin, a vendor straightening a row of jars, a child carrying a loaf of bread. Ghosts of repetition, patterns of living. They move quietly through the mind's eye, neither haunting nor sorrowful, simply continuing. The marketplace, for all its noise and business in life, was always a fragile thing. Built from rope and wood, from fabric and clay, it depended on weather, on trade routes, on the temper of rulers and the patience of the people. Yet its idea, the act of coming together to exchange, is indestructible. The ruins beneath the sand are proof not of ending, but of transformation. The market may be gone, but the rhythm it represented beats on through time. Archaeologists often say that the past never truly disappears. It simply waits to be found again. But perhaps the opposite is also true. The past finds us. In every marketplace today, in the quiet conversations between shopkeepers, in the careful weighing of goods, in the shared glance between buyer and seller, the ancient patterns persist. The sounds may have changed, the materials, the currencies, the speed. Yet the gesture remains, the offering of one thing for another, wrapped in trust. In the cool of evening, the desert grows silent again. The faint scent of mineral dust fills the air, mingling with the scent of wind-warmed stone. The landscape takes on the colors of memory, faded ochre, soft gray, and deep bronze. Somewhere beneath your feet lies a coin that has not seen light in 2,000 years. It rests quietly, untouched, a symbol of value long forgotten. And yet, in its very existence, it still carries meaning. Think of the lives that passed here, the laughter and argument, the worry of merchants counting their last coins, the comfort of shared bread, the routine of survival repeated so many times that it became timeless. These were not the great figures of history, not emperors, generals, or poets, but the anonymous multitude who built the real substance of civilization. The market was their stage, their meeting ground, their measure of success and struggle alike. The archaeologist reports, with their drawings and catalogs, cannot capture the warmth of that living world, but they do something quieter, something enduring. They preserve its outline, the faint edges of its breath. And that outline is enough. For within the space between stones and silence, imagination fills the rest, gently, respectfully, like light entering a half-forgotten room. Night approaches again. The horizon fades into deep blue. Stars emerge one by one, as they did long ago. Their light falls evenly across the ruins, across the dunes, across the invisible traces of streets and stalls. In that stillness, the earth seems almost a hum. Not a sound one can hear, but a sense, a vibration that speaks of continuity. It says, life moved here once. It exchanged, it spoke, it rested. It was ordinary and miraculous all at once. The market beneath the sand remains, waiting for another generation to listen. And perhaps, one night, long from now, when all our modern markets have vanished into dust, someone will kneel in this same place, uncovering the faint outlines of our own forgotten trade. They will wonder, as we do now, who we were, and they will hear, faintly, the same ancient rhythm of exchange that never truly ends. If the humble market square was the heartbeat of the ordinary world, then the halls of the wealthy were its quiet echo, distant, deliberate, and filtered through layers of privilege. The same goods that passed hand to hand among merchants, oil, grain, spice, silk, also traveled upward, transformed by distance and rarity into luxuries fit for palaces. The people of the markets and the people of marble halls rarely met, and yet their lives were bound together by invisible threads of exchange. Imagine yourself standing before the grand house of a noble family in an ancient city. White stone, shaded courtyards, polished floors that reflect the morning light. Servants move through the halls with soft precision, carrying trays, opening shutters, pouring water into bronze basins. The scent is clean and subtle, beeswax, olive oil, and something floral from the gardens beyond. This is a world of quiet abundance, where the rhythms of life move more slowly, more carefully than in the noisy streets below. Here, the lady of the house sits before a low table, her hair being arranged by a servant. On the table lie small treasures, a mirror of polished bronze, a jar of imported perfume sealed with wax, a basket of fine linen brought by caravan. She asks where the goods came from, and the steward answers politely, "From the port to the south, my lady, through merchants who speak the language of the islands." She nods, satisfied. The origin does not matter so much as the assurance that it has traveled far, that it carries the weight of distance. In the kitchens, Cooks grind spices on smooth stones, their hands steady from practice. Pepper, cinnamon, and dried herbs fill the air with their blended warmth. Few of the servants have ever seen the lands where these flavors grow, yet their scents are part of daily life, reminders of unseen networks, of ships and traders and long journeys across uncertain seas. The master of the house spends his morning in the colonnade, speaking with visitors, other landowners, city officials, sometimes a foreign merchant permitted to enter. Their conversations move between politics and profit, between philosophy and practicality. He listens with calm interest, his hand resting on the cool marble of the bench. The market itself may seem distant to him, yet he knows its pulse intimately. He invests in its motion, funds expeditions, and sets the prices of the goods that fill his storerooms. In this way, the marketplace sustains both the humble and the powerful. The common trader sells his wares to survive. The noble trades to preserve influence and status. Both depend on trust, but their scales are different. For one, a dishonest deal means hunger. For the other, it means reputation, a subtler but equally potent form of loss. Outside the villa walls, the same morning light falls upon a market square. There, men and women haggle softly, weighing goods with care. The noise of their voices floats faintly up to the villa on the hill, a murmur like the sound of the sea. The lady hears it sometimes when she sits in her courtyard, and it reminds her of the world beyond the gates. Perhaps she imagines the bustle of stalls and the shimmer of color, though she seldom walks there herself. The market, to her, exists as an idea, a place of origins, of beginnings, from which all things flow upward into her serene domain. At noon, the house grows still. Curtains are drawn to keep the heat away. The servants rest, the air thick with the scent of cooled oil and stone. In the silence, it is possible to imagine that the whole city holds its breath, that every home, rich or poor, pauses for the same quiet moment, sharing the same air, the same light, the same heartbeat of an unseen rhythm. When the afternoon returns, trade resumes. Messengers arrive at the villa carrying records and letters. A shipment delayed, a caravan safely arrived, a new opportunity along the river. The master reads them slowly, his face impassive, yet within his mind, calculations stir, profit, risk, reputation, the flow of power measured not in goods, but in influence. For the elite, the marketplace was not a physical space, but an idea, an invisible architecture built from relationships, promises, and carefully balanced debts. Yet, despite the distance, their lives were tied to the same pattern as the humble sellers. Give and receive, offer and accept, maintain balance, preserve trust. Whether beneath an awning of woven reed or within a hall of marble, the rhythm of exchange remained constant. As evening descends, the noble household dines by lamplight. The food is fragrant with spices that cross continents. Cups of glass catch the flicker of flame. There is conversation, slow and measured, a recitation of news, a passing mention of ships at harbor. For the diners, the world seems wide and secure. But outside the walls, the market continues under the same night sky, lit by smaller, humbler flames. The distance between them is vast, and yet not unbridgeable. Every dish, every thread of silk, every polished vessel began its journey in the hands of ordinary people. Workers, sailors, traders. In every gesture of comfort, a hidden multitude labors unseen. And so, the market's hum rises again, echoing softly through the stillness of the night, connecting the villa and the square, the powerful and the poor, within the same endless current of exchange. There were days in the ancient city when boundaries softened, when the sun fell at a certain angle and the air shimmered with warmth. The marketplace became a gathering point not just of trade, but of society itself, a fragile bridge between the worlds of the powerful and the poor. On these days, the noble might step from his carriage, shaded by attendants, not to buy or sell, but to be seen, to walk among the people, to breathe the same air, to remind them, and himself, that the order of things still held. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of such a morning. The air is heavy with the scent of baked bread and olive oil, of dust stirred by sandals and hooves. The streets are bright with fabric canopies in faded reds and yellows, shifting softly in the breeze. You hear the faint rustle of fine robes as a noble entourage moves through the crowd, surrounded by the sound of ordinary life. The clatter of pottery, the murmur of voices, the low laughter of children weaving between stalls. For a moment, the difference between high and low seems to blur. The merchant bows, the noble nods, and in that quiet exchange there is a flicker of mutual recognition. Each depends on the other. One supplies the goods that sustain comfort. The other supplies the coin that sustains survival. The air between them hums with this silent understanding, a balance older than law, born from necessity itself. Temples stood near many markets, their steps worn smooth by both peasants and patricians. Offerings were made there before or after trade. Small coins, baskets of fruit, incense wrapped in cloth. Inside those cool chambers, the scent of oil lamps and flowers replaced the noise of the streets. Here, both rich and poor knelt upon the same stone. For all their differences, they whispered their hopes to the same gods. Perhaps this was the truest meeting place of all. Not the stalls or the squares, but the quiet shadow beneath a stone column, where human need spoke in a single voice. Festivals, too, blurred the lines. On certain days, the city became a stage for joy and ritual. Lanterns were hung, music played in the distance, and food was shared across classes. Nobles watched the performances from shaded balconies while commoners gathered below, their laughter rising like smoke. For a few hours, everyone belonged to the same rhythm, the same pulse of celebration. It was temporary, but it mattered. These shared moments, however fleeting, were reminders that the hierarchy rested upon shared humanity. As dusk approached, the crowds would thin. Servants would return to their masters' homes, carrying baskets filled with the day's purchases. Merchants would sweep the dust from their stalls, their hands rough from work, yet their minds at ease. The nobles would retreat into their carriages, the sound of wheels fading into the hum of evening. The bridge between worlds would close until the next day, as gently as it had opened. In this daily dance of approach and retreat, the city found its balance. The market was the stage, the place where lives touched without mingling too deeply. It taught patience, respect, and endurance. For those who lived by trade, the presence of the powerful was both a blessing and a reminder. Fortune could lift or vanish in a moment, carried away by a single command or change in favor. And yet, life went on. The bread was baked, the lamps were lit, the rhythm of buying and selling continued beneath the indifferent stars. To the observer, these crossings between classes might seem insignificant, brief exchanges in a vast web of life. But they formed the threads of continuity that held societies together. Without them, the distance between rich and poor would have become too wide to sustain. Every shared glance, every quiet negotiation, every whispered prayer in the same temple. They were the gentle bridges that carried civilization forward. As night deepens, the market square empties. The awnings fold down, the last embers of cooking fires flicker and fade. Yet, in the still air, the echoes remain. Laughter, footsteps, the sound of coins, the faint murmur of voices long gone. In the imagination, these sounds blend together into something soft and continuous. The eternal hum of exchange, both material and human. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear that hum even now. It drifts across centuries and empires, unchanged in its essence. The rich and the poor, the buyer and the seller, the giver and the receiver. Each has always reached toward the other, if only for a moment, bridging the vastness of circumstance through simple, shared need. That bridge is invisible, but it endures, as constant as the turning of the earth, as quiet as breath. In every ancient city, the signs of prosperity were visible from afar. Towers gleamed in the morning light, Bronze gates reflected the sun, and courtyards bloomed with carefully tended gardens. But beneath this brilliance lay a quieter truth, that luxury, once achieved, becomes its own form of labor. The powerful worked endlessly to preserve what they owned, guarding it as the humble guarded their bread. The difference lay not in struggle, but in scale. Imagine yourself wandering through the upper district at dawn. The streets are wide and paved with smooth stones, shaded by colonnades that whisper faintly as the wind moves through them. The air smells faintly of wet leaves and clean plaster. You pass doorways guarded by statues, courtyards lined with fountains, and houses filled with the low, rhythmic sound of water flowing into basins. All is order, symmetry, restraint. Yet within that calm lies tension, the quiet vigilance that accompanies privilege. In one house, a noble sits alone before a scroll. The light of an oil lamp trembles against the wall, its flames steady but small. He reads a list written in careful ink, inventories of stored goods, accounts of grain, fabrics, slaves, and debts owed. His fortune is measured line by line, number by number, fragile as the parchment itself. He leans back, closing his eyes for a moment. Wealth, though vast, brings no peace. It demands constant attention, constant reinforcement, like a wall that must be rebuilt every day against the slow erosion of time. Nearby, in another villa, a woman paces along a shaded walkway. Her robe drifts softly behind her, its silk whispering with every step. Her garden stretches before her, filled with still water and fragrant flowers. She has everything that can be bought: perfumes from Arabia, fabrics from Egypt, glass from distant islands. Yet her thoughts drift toward the same markets she rarely visits. She imagines the hum of voices, the scent of earth and spice, the honesty of small exchanges. In her silence, there's a kind of yearning, not for more, but for simplicity, for a world where value is felt, not counted. In their search for permanence, the wealthy of the ancient world built monuments, temples, mausoleums, inscriptions carved into stone. Their names were etched deeply, their likenesses set in marble. And yet, over centuries, all those names faded. The walls crumbled, the statues weathered, the scrolls burned or vanished. Only fragments remain: a single coin, a chipped cup, a word carved into a brick. The record of greatness became as fragile as the market stall it once overlooked. Archaeologists uncover these remnants today with quiet care. They find the traces of luxury not in gold or jewels, but in patterns. A piece of fine pottery discarded beside a servant's chamber. The remnants of imported oil residue clinging to a broken jar. These fragments speak softly of a truth the ancients knew but seldom voiced: that wealth is not power over time, but participation in it. To be rich, to be poor, to trade, to consume. All are part of the same circular rhythm. The market below and the villa above were never truly separate. Both were woven into the same slow fabric of existence. As night falls again over the imagined city, you can almost hear that rhythm continuing. The lamps in the noble homes flicker, casting long shadows over the tiled floors. The servants move quietly through the halls, collecting cups, extinguishing wicks, closing shutters. The noble household falls into silence, but the world beyond continues. The footsteps in the distant streets, the faint voice of a seller calling out to one last customer. The weight of wealth lies not in gold or marble, but in memory, in the awareness that what one holds can never truly be kept. Empires, like fortunes, rise and fall with the same inevitability as the tide. The wise among the ancients understood this. Some donated wealth to temples, hoping to balance their fortune with favor from the gods. Others turned inward, seeking solace in philosophy. The Stoics spoke of calm amid abundance, of the virtue of detachment, of letting go even while holding much. Perhaps they, too, listened to the market's murmur and heard in it the truth that nothing truly belongs to anyone. Now the city sleeps. The torches along the upper terraces burn low. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and distant fires. From a highest balcony, one could look down and see the darkened outlines of the streets below, where the market once thrived, now is silent. The divide between rich and poor fades in this darkness. All that remains is the soft, breathing quiet of a world at rest. A reminder that, in the end, every life, no matter how gilded or humble, is folded into the same night. And so, the rhythm of ancient trade slows to its final whisper. The market sleeps, the city sleeps, and a long passage of history folds over them both like a blanket of dust and stars. Wealth, poverty, ambition, and rest, all reduced in time to silence. And in that silence, there is peace. And so, the lamps grow dim. The noise of trade, of footsteps and voices, fades into the long hush of memory. The ancient market, that living heart of exchange, falls silent once more. Where merchants once called out their prices, only the wind speaks now, brushing gently against the stones. Where buyers haggled and children laughed, there is only the patient rhythm of the earth, breathing slowly beneath the dust. You might imagine standing there, the last visitor in an empty square. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of ash and distant rain. The moonlight touches the edges of broken walls, turning them silver and soft. Each shadow feels ancient and kind. You take a slow breath, and the centuries fall away. The stories of the marketplace, of bakers and nobles, of sailors and scribes, linger like echoes in a quiet hall. They remind us that civilization was never built in palaces alone. It grew from these simple acts of exchange, from the passing of grain and salt, from the trust between hands, from the quiet labor of those whose names have vanished but whose rhythm remains. As you listen, that rhythm becomes softer, steadier, a heartbeat fading into calm. You can feel its echo in your own breathing now, slow and even. The people of the past have drifted into sleep, and perhaps it's time you join them. The ancient market has closed for the night. The awnings are folded, the coins counted, the lamps extinguished. Yet in that stillness, something remains, a quiet continuity, as if the past itself were keeping watch. It hums softly beneath the stars, reminding us that everything once busy, once loud, will one day find its rest. Here, in the space between memory and sleep, you might sense that peace, the peace that time offers when all things settle back into silence. The cobblestones are cool. The night air is gentle. The stories are complete. So let the world fade a little now. Let the market sleep, and with it, let her mind drift. You are safe here in the calm shadow of history, surrounded by the quiet of forgotten lives. Their work is done. The day is over, and all that remains is rest. If this story helped you find that rest, if the quiet hum of ancient life soothed your thoughts, feel free to like this video and subscribe to Sleepy Historian, but only if it truly brings you peace. Tell me softly in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's strangely comforting to know who else is out there, drifting to the same rhythm, falling asleep to the same old stories. Now, close your eyes. Let the echoes fade. The market sleeps. The world is quiet, and you can rest.